Credit card companies design their minimum payment structures with one specific objective: keeping you in debt for as long as mathematically possible to maximize their interest revenue. It is an engineering model built for their profit, not your financial resolution. Consider a baseline scenario. You currently owe $10,000 on a credit card, carrying a standard 25% annual percentage rate. Look at this timeline. If you choose to make only the minimum required monthly payments on that balance, this chart tracks your principal. It decreases at a nearly flat trajectory until you finally hit zero in the year 2056. That is 30 full years from today. 3 decades from now, under this payment model, you will still be actively paying interest on cocktails, movie tickets, takeout meals, or whatever consumer purchases you swiped on credit last weekend. This exposes a flaw in standard consumer advice. Policing your daily microtransactions, like skipping a $5 latte, is mathematically insignificant against a balance that takes 30 years to clear. Escaping this cycle requires abandoning the false psychological comfort of making minimum payments and adopting a precise mathematical approach to repayment. The first mistake is falling into the minimum payment trap. Making minimum payments on high-interest debt is the financial equivalent of taking a stack of cash and lighting it on fire. The money vanishes, yielding no long-term value. This trap functions because it rarely feels like an immediate emergency. As long as you make that small payment each month, no collection agents call and your services remain active, creating a quiet illusion of financial stability. This chart displays the raw cost of that illusion. Beside your original $10,000 principal, this interest block represents over $20,000 that you will pay over a 30-year minimum payment schedule. The immediate countermeasure is the audit protocol. You must document every single debt obligation you hold: credit cards, student loans, auto loans, and mortgages, and record the specific interest rate attached to each one. Once you have clarity on those figures, automate your monthly bill payments so that every dollar above your minimum requirement is systematically routed toward the liability with the highest interest rate. Contributing just an additional $50 or $100 per month toward your highest interest principal dramatically shortens the 30-year repayment timeline, often shaving years off your debt journey. Proactive, automated principal targeting is the only viable defense against compounding interest designed to span multiple decades. This brings us to a second error: obsessing over minor daily expenses while ignoring high-leverage structural changes. Cutting out a $5 coffee twice a week saves $40 a month. That sacrifice will not change the trajectory of a $20,000 balance. Instead, you must target high-leverage opportunities, starting with direct APR negotiation with your credit card issuer. Banks operate on a strict calculus. Acquiring a new customer costs them hundreds of dollars, meaning card issuers often prefer lowering a current user's interest rate over losing their business entirely or facing a default. When you call, bypass the frontline representatives and request a retention specialist. State that you have established an aggressive payoff plan. Note that competing card issuers are offering lower promotional rates, and directly ask what reductions they can apply to your current APR. Look at this line graph tracking total interest. If you successfully negotiate a 25% APR down to 12% on a $10,000 balance, your trajectory drops from this steep line terminating at $20,000 down to this shallower line ending at $9,500. That single phone call instantly saves you $10,500 without requiring a single change to your daily lifestyle. If an issuer refuses the rate reduction, you simply hang up and immediately move to the next strategy without losing your momentum. Optimizing the structural mechanics of a loan yields significantly better mathematical returns than obsessively policing minor daily consumption. The third error occurs when consumers attempt to pay down multiple debt balances simultaneously without a core prioritization strategy. When you scatter extra payments across several loans, high interest balances compound faster than your fractured payments can suppress them. This can create a scenario where your total debt balance actually grows despite making regular payments. The snowball method, or the avalanche method. In this flow diagram, we see the debt snowball. This method prioritizes paying off your smallest absolute balance first, regardless of the interest rate. By directing all excess capital to fill the smallest bucket first, it provides psychological wins that build momentum. Conversely, the debt avalanche prioritizes your highest interest rate debt first. This approach is mathematically optimal because it suppresses your most expensive liability, saving the maximum amount of capital over the life of the loans. Rather than debating which framework is superior, select one system within 5 minutes and execute it with absolute consistency. Indecision between two winning frameworks is the only certain way to fail at debt prioritization. A final, severe mistake is waiting until you are entirely debt-free before beginning to invest. Delaying market entry deprives you of the single most powerful asset in wealth creation: compound time. Consider this chart comparing two investors. Investor A invests $100 per month at age 25, stops entirely after just 10 years, and lets it compound at 7%. Investor B waits until age 35, then invests $100 monthly for 30 continuous years. Look at the endpoints. Investor A ends up with significantly more wealth at 65, despite contributing less, because they secured a 10-year head start. Capturing an employer's 401k match, or investing as little as $50 a month while paying down debt, preserves this irreplaceable compounding timeline. Building wealth requires contributing to your investments, even while you follow a debt repayment strategy, ensuring that when the balance finally hits zero, your portfolio is already decades in motion.
Mainstream debt management advice almost entirely relies on average methodologies, generic rules of thumb designed for the lowest common denominator. For high earners, adopting these passive strategies mathematically guarantees failure. Relying on these flawed axioms creates systemic friction. It establishes a cycle where individuals with significant earning potential remain trapped in revolving balances, unable to convert their high income into actual net worth. To understand exactly how this cycle operates, we are continuing our strategic breakdown of severe debt mistakes, specifically deconstructing errors 4 through 7. The modern debt landscape thrives on manual tracking and the anxiety it produces. Escaping that landscape requires replacing willpower with an automated, conscious financial architecture. You must abandon emotional motivation. Sustainable financial success means treating your personal finances as a cold, structural cash flow engineering problem. The fourth major error in debt elimination is attempting to clear high-interest balances while maintaining zero liquid savings. This approach has a fatal operational flaw. Life does not pause while you pay down credit cards. It operates with inevitable, unexpected financial shocks. Sudden medical bills, emergency automotive repairs, or even temporary job losses are not anomalies. They are standard operational variables in any household. Facing these emergencies with zero cash reserves forces you straight back to the only available safety net, high-interest credit cards. The entire cycle resets. Preventing this requires a mandatory systemic solution. You must automate a baseline emergency savings transfer. Allocate 5 to 10% of your net take-home pay directly into a dedicated high-yield savings account. This transfer must trigger automatically on payday, before discretionary spending can occur. Maintaining this 5% transfer creates a functional cash cushion within 3 to 6 months. This expanding liquidity buffer acts as a structural shield. By absorbing real-world shocks with cash, your primary debt elimination plan remains uninterrupted. That brings us to mistake number 5, relying on complex, overwhelming budget spreadsheets to manage your daily finances. People often attempt to regain control by downloading intricate budget templates, tracking individual grocery prices across different stores, and manually auditing every daily receipt. This level of micromanagement induces severe decision fatigue. It invariably leads to behavioral burnout and a complete financial relapse. The permanent replacement for manual budgeting is the automated conscious spending plan, a system that organizes your cash flow into 4 distinct structured categories. Category 1 is fixed costs. This encompasses all non-negotiables: rent or mortgage payments, utilities, insurance, core groceries, and minimum debt obligations. Your target allocation for these fixed costs should fall precisely between 50 and 60% of your net take-home pay. Automating these fixed payments guarantees baseline stability. It mathematically protects you against late fees, penalty rate hikes, and credit score damage without requiring daily attention. Category 2 is automated investments. This dictates a target of 10% of net income, or at least enough to capture your 401k match. Category 3 is savings, allocating 5 to 10% for emergency reserves and short-term goals. Structuring 70 to 80% of your income into these 3 automated pillars completely removes daily decision-making. You neutralize the psychological friction of debt management by taking the choices out of your own hands. The final block is Category 4, guilt-free spending. This covers your discretionary desires: dining out, entertainment, and travel. When you are actively carrying high-interest consumer debt, a temporary behavioral adjustment is required here. This category must be scaled back to generate extra cash flow. The common trap is attempting an unsustainable 100% elimination of all discretionary spending. Total restriction creates an illusion of progress. It builds up psychological pressure that inevitably collapses into behavioral burnout and massive binge spending. The correct execution strategy is a structured, gradual reduction. Identify your top 2 discretionary categories and reduce them by 50% over a 6-month window. If you dine out 20 times per month, reduce that frequency to 16 times next month. Continue the phase-down sequence to 13, eventually stabilizing at 10 times per month.
The cash flow recovered from this reduction must be redirected immediately to your highest interest debt balance. Systematic, structured reduction accelerates your debt-free timeline dramatically, and it achieves this without triggering the psychological deprivation that ruins manual budgets. Mistake number 6 is interpersonal, maintaining absolute secrecy around debt within long-term relationships and marriages. The structural fallout from this is severe. Discovering unrevealed debt breaks foundational trust and introduces intense marital friction into the household dynamic. The specific dollar amount is irrelevant. Whether the balance is $10,000 or $100,000, the structural damage is caused by the secrecy itself, not the principal. Addressing this with a partner requires a specific protocol. The goal is strictly avoiding defensive excuses or presenting overwhelming, chaotic spreadsheets. Effective disclosure relies on 3 mandatory principles: full acknowledgement of the debt, total personal responsibility, and presenting an active, structured repayment plan. Demonstrating your automated payoff timeline and proving that the system is currently executing creates immediate and verifiable transparency. Open alignment on debt transforms a hidden liability into a shared operational goal. It allows both partners to move past the friction and build a unified vision for future wealth. The 7th and final mistake is constant procrastination. This takes the form of delaying debt payoff until after the holidays, after a promotion, or waiting for an arbitrary date on the calendar. Finance operates on a strict mathematical truth. Time is the absolute ally of the investor, but it is the unforgiving enemy of the debtor. The stealth mechanics of compounding interest do not pause for holidays. It quietly extracts real wealth from your household every single day that action is delayed. This ticking counter represents the reality for many carrying heavy credit card balances. Daily interest charges frequently exceed $50 to $100 per day. This daily delay represents a direct transfer of your future purchasing power back to the lending institution. The primary countermeasure to procrastination is understanding that operational progress always trumps theoretical perfection. The required microaction is simple. Commit just an extra $50 per month above your minimum payments today. Taking this small, immediate action builds the operational habits you will need to efficiently direct much larger income increases, annual bonuses, or tax refunds in the future. By replacing passive debt management with an automated, conscious financial architecture, you mitigate the friction of revolving balances, reclaim your earning power, and establish the structural foundation required to grow your net worth.